Hello my friends, Hank here, and today I'm very excited to paint up one of Tamiya's brand new 1/35th scale figures from their most recent release, this lovely German mid-war MG team set. These are some phenomenal figures, and they're very user-friendly for beginner builders and experienced modelers alike. With that said, let's jump right into it. With this figure, I found it beneficial to paint him up in three major sections: the main body and his weapon, as you can see here, his helmet, and his head. Since we'll be in pretty close quarters up there around the MG stock, this should make our painting process considerably easier. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do here, as with most of our figure painting projects, is to spray the entire figure with a coat of flat black to give us a nice base to work up from. Next, let's spray the entire body of our figure with a coat of German field gray. The standard Wehrmacht infantry uniform throughout most of the war was this M40 field tunic and trouser set, which conveniently for us is all in the same color. So by spraying this on here, not only will we get a beautiful smooth coat of gray, but we'll also save ourselves quite a bit of brush painting. It's a win-win. Now for this figure, we're also going to experiment a bit and actually airbrush our head as well. We're using the same medium flesh tone that we've become accustomed to as our base color in previous Sprues and Brews videos, but this time we're just going to spray it on here instead of brush painting it. This again gives us a very smooth, clean flesh effect that is going to look great on our finished product. With our basic skin tone on there, let's grab a very fine tip brush and carefully dot in a couple of eyes for our fella here. Nothing fancy at all, just some very small dots to give him a little bit of life and actually produce some sort of eye line here. And we'll wrap up our airbrush painting work by spraying our Stahlhelm with an all-over coat of Dunkelgrau. Easy as that. Now let's move on to some brush work. To start, let's tackle our hands here. This will be some delicate work since everything is so congested up here at the top of our figure, but just go slow and try to avoid overpainting as much as you can. We're using our same flat flesh that we used for our head in previous steps. With our hands complete, we'll switch over to some German camo medium brown, which we're going to use for a couple of components here, for the stock of our MG42 and for the body of our figure's canteen. This next step is a bit tricky, but again, just take your time. We're going to paint our figure's bread bag here on his back with some khaki. If you do overpaint onto other elements of the figure, which I certainly did, fear not, we can always come back at the end and repaint over any mistakes we've made, all part of the process. Switching gears to our flat black paint here, let's start to pencil in his belt, his suspenders, and his other field gear. This big old box on his right hip here is a special case for parts and maintenance equipment for the machine gun, so you'll only see these on machine gunners in infantry squads. We can carry on here and paint up his Luger holster, his bayonet, and the carrying case for his field shovel as well. Now, our figure's mess tin and gas mask case can remain field gray like the uniform itself, but at this point we can come back and paint in the straps and buckles for those components with some flat black as well. Getting to the final steps in our initial painting process here, let's go ahead and paint the whole body of our MG42 in flat black. And while we're at it, we can also paint in our figure's boots with the same color. For the drum magazine on his MG42, we can return to that same field gray we used for our uniform. And for some finer detail work, let's load up a very fine tip brush with some white aluminum and add some color to his belt buckle and the other metal components on his field gear. For an extra touch, I added some tiny little dots of white aluminum on the bottom of his boots to replicate the hobnails that were used for additional traction on most German infantry boots of the period. And to wrap up our paint work, we can dry brush a little bit of that white aluminum on our MG42 itself to help accentuate the details of the weapon. At this stage, we can now comfortably attach our head and helmet to the rest of the figure using a little bit of plastic cement. This extra bit of sprue won't stay on here, of course, but it can be helpful to make sure everything is aligned properly. And once we remove that extra bit, we can simply cement our Stahlhelm into place as well. With our painting and final construction complete, it's time to move on to some weathering. First things first, we gotta spray our whole figure here with a coat of gloss varnish to seal in and protect all of our paintwork. Next, once our clear coat has cured completely, we'll take some enamel dark wash and apply a liberal coating all over our figure. Messy, I know, but stick with me, this is all part of the plan. With our wash applied, we can now grab some enamel odorless thinner and start removing any of that excess wash we don't want on our figure. This thinner will also help the remaining wash flow into all the recesses of our figure and really help accentuate the details of our sculpt by creating some lovely artificial shadows and textures. Once we're happy with the state of our weathering and it has dried completely, it's time for yet another coat of gloss varnish. These Tamiya figures come with some very nice decals for a splash of extra detail on our uniforms, and we're going to leverage a few of them here. First, we'll start with this enlisted man's shoulder boards. Of course, we'll start by letting them soak in our trusty, high-tech, Lucky Snow White water dish that we all now know and love. While those do soak, let's add a little micro set to our figure's shoulders to prepare for the decals, and then we can start to maneuver those into position like so. Once we're happy with the placement, we can use a little micro sol to help the decals fully settle and conform to the surface of our figure. We'll also go ahead and add this helmet decal to the side of our Stahlhelm as well, using the same process. Once our decals have fully settled and dried, it's time to spray our whole figure with a coat of matte varnish to wrap up our work and knock down any of that excess shininess on our figure. And with that, we can carefully remove our figure from the painting jig. I'm absolutely blown away with the quality of these new Tamiya figures. The level of detail and the quality of these sculpts is incredible for plastic figures, especially at a considerably low price point. This fella is going to make a wonderful addition to any diorama or vignette. If you would like to grab some of these figures for yourself, I will have links down to shopping options in the description below. And until next time, my friends, as always, be well, happy building. Cheers.